Hey, welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns. I'm trying to switch up the intro so I guess hey was my idea for today. I could do better. And I will, I promise you. But anyway, this is the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. This is where we talk about, or at least I talk about, practices and concepts around mindfulness and compassion that can help you to show up to your life, to be here fully, to be here completely, and to be here honestly and with authenticity, right? And to do all of that with compassion, right? Because we know through science and research, we know how valuable compassion is. Not just because it's nice to do for people, not just because it helps others and all that kind of stuff, but it's indicative of our health, right? It's indicative, or it impacts our health in a very, very real way. Okay, in terms of the integration of our brain, our body, the integration of being, connected to each other, the ability to be honest and the ability to be authentic, right? These are all tied in to the practice of compassion. It's all impacted by it, right? And compassion is something that is so simple and frankly very easy to practice, and it will do you a lot of good. So before we get into today's topic, I want to put a question out to y'all. Okay. Now, many of you have reached out for the one, the free coaching session that I offer to everyone, and I love that you've all reached out, and I love talking to you, and I love all of it. Okay, and it's beautiful, right? But I also know that even though this first session is free, right, and that's great, and I try to do that for everyone. But a lot of times when I talk to people, it turns out that it's the idea of entering into a sort of coaching relationship, is not financially feasible for people right now. Look, there's a reality, right? The world runs on money, right? Money is part of it, right? And so I need to make enough to pay my bills and all that kind of stuff, right? But there is another concept. There's a third way, if you will, right? Like, it's not either one-on-one coaching or no coaching. There's also a concept of group coaching. And I wonder if anybody out there would be interested in a little bit of group coaching. I'm considering starting a once a week kind of, not so much a coaching program where it's like, okay, 12 weeks, I'm going to bring you through these 12 weeks. I'm going to, do all this thing, right? But more like just like a weekly meeting, right? Where you can come if you want to, pay per meeting if you want to, and just show up with whatever questions you might have. Right. And so I wonder if that's something that would be appealing to y'all. And because it's a group program, it can become very, very affordable. Right. Like, we can, like, $15-$20 per session, maybe even less, depending on how many people. It certainly makes it worth my time, right? Because that's the thing, right? Like, it's all the economics, right? So as long as it works, I'm happy to do it, right? And so I wonder how many people might be interested in that. And so I would love for you to let me know. Okay. And I'm also going to pose this to my community in the Learning to Surf world, right? I have, we have like 10 or 12 people who regularly show up every week for the meditation. So I'm going to put this out to them too, to see if maybe they would be interested in another night of the week that would be more, not doing guided meditation so much as just like an hour and a half long kind of meeting where we just talk about the concepts of mindfulness, and I help you to figure out practices, and I help you to figure out, because that's the thing. A lot of times, you can see all these books, right? It's very simple to go to write a book, and I'm in the middle of writing one myself, where it's like, okay, just do this, and that's how it works, right? But that doesn't account for your life, right? That doesn't account for, like, yeah, great, Art. It sounds great to do meditation first thing in the morning, but guess what? I've got 3 kids, and it's just not possible. I just can't do it, right? Okay, so the book isn't going to tell you another way to do it, right? But a coach can. right? A coach can say, okay, well, let's talk about, in a 5-minute conversation, I can get enough information from you that I can then, make a recommendation that will be different from doing the meditation in the morning again, for instance, but still allowing you to benefit from the work. Okay, so I'm just throwing it out there. This is the first time I'm mentioning it. This is the first time it's becoming a thing in this universe. So I'm just kind of, throwing it out there for now. So if you could, kindly send me an email and let me know if this is something you might be interested in. Okay, and this is again the first step. So what day, what time, all that stuff, that is still going to be determined. Certainly do a few different groups if that's what it becomes, to accommodate different times and stuff like that. So anyway, first step, how many people would be interested in something like this? Okay, so let me know. Okay, if you think you might be interested in this and you'd like to learn more, and to figure out what the potential might be, then please just let me know. Okay, and then based on that information, we'll make our decisions. Okay. All right, cool. So what I wanted to talk about today, and before I go, let's also just remind you that we do also have this other wonderful group that meets every Wednesday evening. Okay, I think there's a few people from this world here who has entered that world there, and I love that. I love the worlds colliding and combining. It's beautiful. But I just want to remind you, okay, now that is something that we do by donation, but most people, the donation is zero, and that's okay, right? It's a guided meditation, usually takes between 30 and 40 minutes of guided meditation, and then we have a beautiful like 20 to 30 minute conversation, right? And the conversation is often, like I will usually kind of just pose a subject, but oftentimes after I pose that, somebody comes on and they talk about whatever they want to talk about, and it kind of, and that's what gives me this idea of the group, right? Because it's kind of, it becomes like a group, but it's only for like 15, 20 minutes, right? Because that's all we have time for. So there's so much more that we could learn if we do like an hour and a half of just that, but that meditation group does exist, and it is open for you. Okay, I want you to know that. Okay, it's very, very simple. I'm going to put the link in the description today to join that group. Okay, literally just click on the link, register within Meetup. It's free. Nothing at all is going to cost you any money to sign up or anything like that. And just, as soon as you're in the Meetup group, in the Dharma Talks or whatever Adam named this one, you'll start getting the notifications and all that kind of stuff. And so then it's much, much easier. Okay. So that link will be in the description. For anybody out there who would like to join us for a beautiful meditation Wednesday evenings, okay, here's the old game that I play. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock Mountain Time, which means 6 o'clock Pacific Time, 8 o'clock in the Midwest, and 9 o'clock on the East Coast. Okay, so... All right, so what I wanted to talk about today, though, was something that... And I totally rejiggered the black book for this because I really wanted to talk about this today while it was kind of, fresh in my mind, because I kind of came across a bit of a revelation yesterday, and I wanted to share it with you, or not so much a revelation, but just sort of an evolution of an idea, right, or an evolution of an understanding, if you will, and I wanted to share it with you today. So in mindfulness, right, there's this thing that we talk about in mindfulness called the 4 pillars of mindfulness, right, which is just to say that anything that we experience, okay, anything in our lives that we experience in 4 different, pretty specific ways, actually very specific ways. Everything we experience, okay, we experience in our body, right, as a physical sensation, right? You walk outside and it's a beautiful day, you feel that, right? You walk outside and it's really hot, you feel that, right? You pick something up that somebody dropped and you see their face light up as they thank you, you feel that. You feel it in your body. Right? Somebody cuts you off or runs through a stop sign and almost hits your car. You feel that in your body. right? Okay. So the second pillar, the second way that we experience the world around us is emotionally. And all those things that I just mentioned, they also include emotions, right? Somebody almost hit your car. You certainly feel an emotion, right? Um, just moving through your life, you're going to experience emotions all the time. Now, sometimes those emotions are neutral. There's this really thin little strip of emotions that can be neutral, but it's pretty rare. Most of the time, we're either, we're something, right? We're feeling some kind of emotion. And again, this is anything we experience, okay? The third way we experience everything we experience is in our thoughts, right? Cognitively, right? Like, oh, this woman just dropped her keys. I got to hand them to her. And gosh, that was a nice thing for me to do. And gosh, she looks so happy now. And I'm so glad that I did that. Okay. Those are thoughts, right? So those are the three, now I practiced with those or I mean, yeah, I do practice that way. I mean, I certainly have practiced that in the past. I don't necessarily do that specifically for myself right now, but one of the main practices that I give everyone I work with is to, kind of pause from time to time and notice those three aspects of your experience, right? And again, at any given moment of the day, you can check in and notice these three ways of experience, right? Like you can at any time check in. What is my body feeling in this moment? Emotionally, what am I experiencing in this moment? My thoughts, what are they doing right now in this moment, right? And now normally I kind of stay away from the fourth pillar of mindfulness because it's a little hard to grasp, quite frankly. It can be anyway. And so usually what happens is as I'm coaching people, we talk about that fourth pillar. Like that becomes the kind of, we understand that fourth pillar through the work that we do. Okay. And so I want to try to describe the fourth pillar to you today, just from the standpoint of and again, it's an evolution of an idea that I had to, just yesterday. Actually, this came to me. Not just yesterday. It's come and gone for a while now, if I'm honest. So this fourth pillar, right, is what Jack Kornfield, the Buddhist master and teacher, will call the Dharma. Right now, there's many different definitions for the word Dharma. Right, Dharma is in the traditional Chinese kind of understanding, Buddhist understanding. Right, Dharma means the way, right? So it's the path. It's basically kind of life itself. In Taoism, they would call Tao the same thing that we would call Dharma in Buddhism. Okay. But there's different sort of ways of looking at the Tao or the Dharma, right? And let's stick to the Dharma because we're not talking about Taoism. We're not really talking about Buddhism either, but this is very specific to Buddhism. So the Dharma, right, it can be defined in many different ways, but in this particular, kind of context, what I want to explain and how I want to define it, and the way Jack Kornfield talks about it, is that the Dharma can be seen as the patterns of our lives and the tendencies that we have, the predispositions that we have for things. Okay, a lot of times what I call this is our programming. Right, all of us from the age of birth to the age of about 7 years old, right? Our brains are developing in such a way that we are literally just absorbing everything that happens around us, right? And as we do that, and again, it's absorbing, how people treat us, especially the people who we trust, our caregivers, our teachers, our coaches, our relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles, all that kind of stuff, right? We learn how they're treating us, and of course, because these are the people that we believe in, these are our tribe, right? Well, that becomes the gold standard for treating people, right? Because the way that my parents treat me is the way that, that has to be right. Right now, of course, That's the thing, right? It's a very subjective experience, right? So the way my parents treated me becomes my gold standard for how people should treat each other. Well, you have a much different gold standard because your parents likely treated you a little differently or maybe drastically differently from how my parents treated me. You see how that works? So it's a very subjective sort of programming that we go through, right? And it's very safe to say that that thing is completely exclusive to you, right? There's no other person who has your programming, not even your siblings, which those are going to be the closest ones, but even them, it's not exact, right? And so there's a specific, very subjective, very personal aspect to this, right? And that's you, right? That's your personality. That's what makes you tick, if you will. Okay? And so when we experience anything in the world as we're walking through our life, right? Yes, we're experiencing it in our body, we're experiencing it in our emotions, we're experiencing it in our thoughts, but we're also experiencing it through this thing that we're talking about, as Jack calls it, the Dharma, right? We're experiencing things through our tendencies, through our experiences, through our relationships, through our trauma, right? Your trauma and the responses that you have created to your trauma, that is part of what we're talking about as the Dharma. Now, of course, there are people who lived a life without trauma. Lucky them, right? Good for you. It's rare. I mean, most people have some level of trauma, but there are some people who have none, right? So does that mean that they don't have a Dharma? No, it doesn't mean that at all, right? But if you do have trauma, that trauma becomes part of the Dharma, right? And so why is this important? Right? Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm glad you asked. As we go through life, right, what we're doing is life is a moment by moment experience, right? We are literally experiencing life as it unfolds moment by moment. Okay. And now in each of these given moments, as I'm experiencing the life around me, right? Again, I'm experiencing it physically, emotionally, and cognitively, right? But there's also that fourth thing, right? That aspect that makes me like that thing that really is there's only one, right? That's me, right? And it's important to understand how much that plays into everything that I experience. Okay? Now this is especially true with trauma. From your childhood trauma, adult trauma, it doesn't really matter, right? But when we experience trauma, right, what trauma becomes is it becomes what we call an implicit memory. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about the programming, right? The implicit memory is this, kind of this functionality, right, of our body, right? It's like or of the way that we kind of process the world, right? That implicit memories are the way in which it's almost like a prism through which the entire world comes, right? But it's a prism that is just for you, right? Nobody else has the same prism as you, right? And so this is important because, as you just asked a few minutes ago, this is important because, so let me give you an example, right, of my own self, right? So in my trauma, right, and I'll talk about the trauma just because it's so much more powerful and easier to see this way, right? So my trauma, is part of my trauma response, let me put it, or how should I phrase this? So the trauma that I experienced, right, was very much about self-worth, right? It was very tied into self-worth, right? I was always made to believe that I really wasn't worth much. I just didn't matter. Like I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't, physically fast enough, or, I was too fat. I was too this, I was too that, right? It was all kinds of stuff. Like I just wasn't enough for me, right? And so sometimes as an adult, right, I find myself experiencing things, right? So like if for instance, like, just the other day this happened, right? Where I wake up in the morning and I have two messages. So I'm supposed to have, my expectation is that I have, 5 different meetings with people, right? in my work, right? And I wake up in the morning and 3 of them have canceled, right? It happens. It's rare, but it happens, right? And so now all of a sudden I go from what would have been a very busy day, like even, struggling to keep up with everything, to this day where it's like, wow, now I have all this time. What am I going to do with myself? Now, I certainly have enough to find myself to do, right? But there's this thing that happens to me, right? Like when I'm not actually meeting with clients, and I've only been able to put this together through the awareness that I've developed, and that's what we're talking about here, right? When we bring awareness to all of this, we start to see these patterns of behavior, right? And these patterns of behavior, we can start to see where they're coming from. And if you have if you have experienced trauma in your life, well, chances are that's where those roads are all gonna lead back to the trauma, right? So for me, right, the trauma is this, or for me, the way that it shows up in my life, in my moment to moment experience, is that, when I have these days where I don't have a lot of meetings, all of a sudden, I start to feel depressed. I start to get this like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I feel like I just want to like take a nap like this, and it's temporary. I get myself out of it, of course, but it's this heaviness that I feel, right? And so the other day I realized that, and specifically what we're talking about here, right? It's not just a random example I'm using. It's a specific example that when I feel this, right? What that is that's that trauma coming through, because when I'm meeting with people, and but it's not just being busy, right? I can keep myself busy. That's not a problem. I have plenty to do, right? But when I get to meet with people, right, it gives me such an enormous sense of self-worth, right? Because I can see, like I work with people for weeks and weeks and months and months and months, and I see the transition. I see the growth. I see the healing that they're going through. And allowing myself to be kind of part of that process gives me a sense of self-worth, right? And so therefore, when that is taken away from me, now I start to feel the unworthiness, right? Now this is very, very important, because obviously I don't want to live the way that, like, I don't want to have, a busy day of meeting with clients every day in order for my own, well-being, right? Like I should be able to be well outside of that, no matter what happens with my clients, right? Like we don't want to kind of attach ourselves to circumstances that are the source of our happiness, right? Because the circumstances are uncontrollable and they're always variable. They're always changing, right? And so now with this understanding, with this awareness, when I start to feel myself get that heaviness, that down, that, it's not just a question of like, okay, let me do something to make myself busy so I don't feel this way anymore. Now I can say, oh, that's that little kid in me. That's the little 8-year-old boy in me who, or the 12-year-old boy in me whose father told him he was stupid, right? Like that's that feeling. That feeling that I'm feeling right now, that's him. That's that little boy who's 12 years old and just crushed by the words of his father, and just feels like he's just not worth anybody's time and not worth anybody's, caring. And so once I see that, oh man, that's this little boy in here that's crying inside me. That's what that feeling is. It's not something wrong with me. It's what happened to me. And now I can see that. And if I can hold that in my awareness and in my compassion, now I can start to feel better about it. I can start, or not even that I'm trying to feel better about it, but what I can do is I can not be confused about it. I cannot be like, I cannot like kind of be a victim of it, right? Because that's the way it felt before, right? It felt like, oh gosh, my day, it's just, oh, what am I going to do? This feels terrible. I feel like I want to take a nap. And until I have my next meeting, that's the way I feel, you know? So it's not necessarily that I'm going to change that feeling, right? It's okay to feel that feeling. In fact, the feeling doesn't, it's actually good to feel that feeling, right? Because it gets me in touch with what's really happening. So it's the opposite of like, oh, let me just make myself busy so I don't feel this way anymore until my next client meeting. No, it's about feeling it even more and understanding. And now, if I just practice some self-compassion towards myself, then yes, the feeling starts to change, which is good and stuff. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But more importantly, in that space of self-compassion and in that space of understanding and in that space of the awareness of these four pillars of my experience, moment to moment experience, in that understanding, I feel authentic. I feel confident. I feel safe now. I don't feel the unsafety of the confusion of what the heck is wrong with me? What happened? I was happy 10 minutes ago, or as happy yesterday. Yeah, as of last night, everything was, people were telling me that without me, they wouldn't be, they who knows, like they'd be miserable, whatever. Like all kinds of signs of my self-worth being very, very high. And nothing happened in between except a couple of clients canceling, right? So it's not the clients canceling that's making me feel that heaviness. It's the trauma of my childhood that's making me feel it. And so in that understanding, now I'm growing and now I'm healing. And now I'm coming back into my authenticity, which is important. I hope somebody out there finds this helpful. Okay, I really do. I really do. And if you have any questions, or if you want to know more about this, or you want to, maybe understand how it applies to your life, maybe okay, I hear what you're saying, Art, but I just don't get it. Like I feel this. What does this mean? Kind of thing. I can help you work through that. I certainly can. Okay. And as always, there is a link in the description to get in touch with me. Okay, it's very simple. You just click on the link. It takes you into my calendar. You pick a day that you desire. You click on that day. It's going to show you the available times. If one of those times works out, click on it, put in your name, your email address, and answer a couple of questions. Done. I take it from there. All right? It's that easy. And I would love to see you. I'd love to talk to you that way. We can do Zoom where we look at each other, or we can just do on the phone. That's fine too. All right? And again, please email me though if you're interested. If I get like say even 5 people, I'm going to start this group. And it could really be something that could be very, very beneficial for a lot of people. Okay. And again, the idea here is to make it very accessible, okay, in terms of finance, right? Because I know how hard it gets. And this is one of the things that I have a problem with. This is why I do what I do, is because, therapy is expensive. If you don't have a good insurance plan, then, then it can be very expensive, or it can be, very inexpensive. And you could have somebody just talking to you about, kind of giving you a prescription for something, there's so much more to it. There's so much more to be able to, to understanding ourselves and to working through the things. And again, feeling the feelings. All right. So I hope this was helpful. Please let me know about the group. I would love to host this group. I'm really hoping that I get 10 people or even 5 people. All right, everybody. Have a great day today, and I wish you well. And again, if you have any questions at all, I'm here to answer them, okay? All right, everybody. Back in tomorrow. Take care.